In the hushed stillness of a towering glass-walled boardroom, an unthinkable moment unfolded. A billionaire businesswoman, known for her iron-willed deals and unshakable pride, folded her arms and refused a simple handshake. Across from her stood a poised black woman whose steady, outstretched hand hovered in midair, a polite gesture left hanging in front of dozens of onlookers. Whispers rustled along the conference table as the refusal echoed louder than words. Neither the cameras nor the spectators realized that the woman who'd been slighted was not merely a guest, but the driving force behind a once-in-a-lifetime $10 billion investment that could change everything. The city's skyline gleamed in the early morning light as executives filed into the upper-floor boardroom of a prestigious multinational firm. This meeting was billed as historic, a partnership that could inject unprecedented capital into green infrastructure projects worldwide. At the head of the polished mahogany table sat Victoria Gray, a billionaire who had built her empire in technology and finance. Her reputation for being sharp-tongued and dismissive of those she underestimated preceded her, and today she exuded that same impenetrable confidence. Across the room, walking with the calm assurance of someone accustomed to leading at the highest levels, was Dr. Amara Lewis. Few in the room realized that Amara's foundation had quietly assembled the investment consortium capable of underwriting the entire $10 billion project. To most of the attendees, she appeared simply as a visiting consultant brought in to advise on sustainability strategies. The tension in the air grew almost imperceptibly as the final presentations drew to a close. Cameras from business media outlets were poised to capture what was expected to be a symbolic handshake between Victoria and the project's lead representative. This gesture would signal unity and a shared commitment to an ambitious global plan. But as the spotlight shifted and Amara stepped forward with a warm, professional smile extending her hand, Victoria's eyes narrowed. In that small, pivotal instant, her ingrained prejudices surfaced. She crossed her arms, a faint curl of disdain on her lips. The photographers froze mid-click, sensing the impropriety but uncertain. If they had just witnessed a misunderstanding, or a deliberate slight, what none of them yet knew was that this moment would not just stain the morning's headlines, but reshape the future of the deal itself. News of the awkward moment spread rapidly through the corridors of the corporate tower, before the meeting even adjourned. Assistants exchanged hushed remarks, while some board members looked down at their notes, pretending not to have noticed. The tension simmered as the press later picked up the image of the suspended handshake, turning it into a viral symbol of corporate arrogance and veiled prejudice. For Amara, the slight was not the first of its kind. Throughout her career, she had encountered subtle and overt forms of discrimination, yet she had learned that true power often came from composure. While the incident stung, she focused on the larger purpose. This transformative investment could drive the development of renewable energy and infrastructure in under-resourced regions. Behind closed doors that afternoon, senior advisors debated the implications. Some urged patience, suggesting that the potential benefits of the deal outweighed the impact of a single incident. Others, especially those representing Amara's foundation and its global network of partners, were less inclined to look past the insult. They recognized that partnerships built on respect were essential for such vast commitments of capital. Victoria, meanwhile, brushed off the episode. In her view, negotiations were about leverage, not courtesy. Her long-standing belief that those with wealth dictated the terms led her to underestimate the influence of the quiet, poised woman she had dismissed so publicly. Over the next few days, Amara's team held discreet discussions with other prospective partners. The refusal of a handshake had become, in their eyes, a metaphor for something more profound, a lack of recognition for the dignity and expertise of those who had been historically marginalized. Messages poured in from community leaders and industry figures praising Amara's restraint and criticizing the optics of the incident. As international attention on the story grew, Victoria's advisors began to notice that potential allies were becoming cautious. Deals that had seemed inevitable a week prior were suddenly delayed or renegotiated. Investors quietly inquired whether the foundation behind the $10 billion fund was still fully committed. The perception of arrogance was starting to cost Victoria's empire more than public relations headaches. It was eroding confidence in her leadership. Throughout the turmoil, Amara remained outwardly calm, attending follow-up meetings with a dignified focus on the project's mission. Yet behind the scenes, she and her team were carefully reassessing their alignment with Victoria's firm. They recognized the danger of entrusting such a transformative initiative to someone whose prejudice could undermine collaboration. Step by step, the balance of power shifted. The very figure Victoria had dismissed as an outsider was now quietly deciding the future of the deal. As the next major negotiation session approached, the stakes had never been higher. The boardroom once again filled with executives, cameras, and cautious anticipation. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Victoria entered first, as if staking her claim to authority, her stride as imperious as ever. Amara arrived minutes later, greeted respectfully by a wave of international delegates who had come to witness the final signing. As the meeting commenced, presentations gave way to a discussion of complex numbers, including the scope of investments, projected returns, and the commitments required from all parties. When the floor opened for final confirmations, Amara rose and addressed the assembly. Her words were measured and free of resentment, yet they carried the weight of someone used to navigating obstacles far more complex than boardroom politics. She explained that the foundation she represented had completed its due diligence and was prepared to proceed, but only with partners whose actions aligned with their shared vision of respect and equity. The statement landed like a tremor. Everyone in the room understood the subtext. Victoria shifted in her chair, sensing for the first time that the control she had assumed was hers alone had already slipped away. As the meeting drew near the ceremonial signing, a senior delegate asked, almost perfunctorily, for the traditional handshake to mark the occasion. Amara stood tall, offering a polite smile, but keeping her hands folded in front of her. Instead of extending her hand to Victoria, she turned toward the representatives of allied organizations and acknowledged their support. Cameras captured the moment as an unmistakable reversal of the earlier incident. The tension broke into hushed murmurs and knowing glances. Victoria realized, too late, that her earlier act of refusal had not been forgotten or forgiven. What was meant to be her triumphant moment became the scene in which the world saw her as a cautionary example of arrogance undermining opportunity. The fallout was swift. Within days, major media outlets framed the incident as a stark reminder that leadership in a globalized economy demands more than just wealth and power. Investors who had once vied for a place in Victoria's ventures began to pivot, seeking opportunities with leaders who demonstrated both strategic acumen and inclusive values. The $10 billion project proceeded under new terms that placed Amara's foundation at its core, ensuring that resources were directed not just toward profit but also toward communities most in need. For many watching, it was a symbolic victory, proof that dignity and principle could hold their ground against prejudice, even in the highest echelons of finance. Victoria's reputation suffered not merely because of a single incident, but because it revealed the cost of overlooking character in the pursuit of control. Public opinion shifted to view her less as a visionary and more as a relic of an outdated era in which power excused discourtesy. For Amara, the victory was not personal, but purposeful. She continued her work with the same focus she had always shown, channeling the momentum of the moment into tangible progress for the infrastructure initiative. She often declined interviews about the incident, preferring to let the project's outcomes speak for themselves. The image of that suspended handshake, first refused, later withheld, lingered in the public memory as a reminder of how respect and recognition can shape not only relationships but also the flow of global capital. As the story faded from headlines and settled into case studies on leadership and equity, one question remained for audiences worldwide. How many transformative opportunities have been lost because those in power failed to see the value in the very hands they refused to grasp?